I'm in my final year in the National College of Art and Design, and I'm specializing in constructed textile and surface design. So, what I kind of do is I design fabric from scratch and I weave with a giant loom. And I do kind of crocheting and stuff. And a lot of the work I'm doing this year is looking at technology within textiles. So, using laser cutting and 3D printing and different things like that. And then I also have a huge interest in sustainability and biodesign and kind of biomimicry and working alongside nature instead of against it in relation to textiles and fashion. So this is just a little bit about myself. So like I've said, I'm in my final year and I have a huge interest in sustainability and biodesign. This is my fourth year in NCD and I've done two internships in small fashion brands in Ireland, and a lot of my experience with those companies has actually shaped and changed my attitude towards sustainable fashion and kind of the environmental impacts it has on the planet. So there was a lot of like the companies that I worked for, it was kind of very much pumping work out, and there was a lot of waste and different things like that. So through that, it's only kind of in the last kind of 2-3 years that I really kind of dived into sustainable fashion. And that's why I say I'm not perfect, and I'm still guilty of buying the odd thing in pennies and whatnot. I'm not fully sustainable myself, but I do everything I can to help that. And that's what I think the main message I want to get across is that you don't have to be perfect um, to do your best. So I think that's kind of it. So I'm going to talk to you about some of the kind of facts about the negative environmental impacts that it has, and about fast fashion and the problems that that's kind of created. And then I kind of don't want to dwell on all these kind of negative parts of the industry, and I wanted to try and show how kind of manageable it is to do your best and the different changes that we can make in our lifestyle to kind of help the planet in that aspect. And I'm also going to talk to you about some of the kind of what I think is like groundbreaking research in relation to science and design and how they can be integrated to problem solve. So it's kind of integrating microorganisms into the fibers of textiles so garments can photosynthesize to help with air pollution. So there's different kind of very, very futuristic things going on at the moment. And then hopefully we'll have some time at the end to do Q&A. And then if I can maybe talk about some of the work that I'm doing if we have a bit of time. So the pollution within the fashion and textile industry, fashion and textile industry is obviously huge, and it's actually one of the big causes to a lot of different kind of pollutions: air pollution, water pollution. And so these are just some kind of facts that are kind of quite scary. So 5.2% of waste in our landfills are textiles, and 80% of all clothing is sent to landfills. So they're kind of quite scary statistics, and you can see in the bottom picture there that that's like a picture of lots of textiles in landfills. So, and another kind of aspect is dyeing textiles. So a lot of water is used within the industry, and 1.5 trillion liters of water is used every year in the industry, which is a scary amount of water. And when dyeing textiles, a lot of chemicals are used, and synthetic dyes have really, really harsh chemicals in them. So when they're actually mixed in to dye clothes, the waste that is then left over is no longer like recycled water. It's toxic waste that is then pumped back into the ocean and into rivers and stuff. So although that picture in the bottom right looks very aesthetically nice, it's obviously a lot of chemicals and waste dyeing and stuff that has been pumped back into rivers and stuff. So that actually leaves people with a lot of like less drinking water, and it destroys habitats within the water and different things like that. So that's obviously very scary and something that needs to change. So originally when I started in NCD, I specialized in printed textiles. So that was like screen printing, digital print, and different things like that. And obviously there's a huge amount of chemicals. So when we're dyeing clothes, we have to wear face masks, goggles, lab coats, and have to use special big fume cupboards. So I'd actually then went back and changed to constructed textiles because one of the reasons was there was just so much waste, and we just had this big bucket that all our waste dyes and prints and inks went into, and then it was kind of just disposed of. So I think there are like a lot of negative things that people don't realize when you're buying colored clothes and different things like that. And then in relation to synthetic fabrics, so the likes of polyester, nylon, acrylic and stuff like that, there's lots of microplastic. They're man-made plastic fibers. So when the 190,000 tons of textile microplastic fibers end up in the oceans every year as well. So that's why when you're looking at shopping for polyester and you're buying things that are made of polyester, like that's another thing that I think people need to realize that when every time you're washing your clothes, these microplastic fibers are being released into your washing machine and then pumped back out into the seas again. So then fast fashion, the fast fashion industry is the kind of mass production of cheap clothing. And oh, sorry, why is this there? Hang on 1 second. Oh.
Don't worry, we can edit that out of the recording.
Perfect, sorry.
We won't dox your email.
To pop up there. So yeah, so fast fashion is the mass production of cheap disposable clothing, and companies release countless new collections, making us feel constantly out of date and making us want to buy more clothes so we fit into society and different things like that. So it's all kind of a big marketing plan on their side. So 50 years ago, there was only 2 seasons within a year. So your kind of summer and winter. And now there's 52 micro collections a year. So you have like pre-fall, pre-summer, all these kind of different collections that aren't necessarily needed. So again, it's this big kind of marketing plan, and more clothes are being pumped out for people to buy and to kind of feel a bit out of place. So then also fast fashion companies obviously are unethical to a lot of their workers, and then that's just like kind of another aspect that, again, I actually don't have a lot of the facts about that stuff, but I like to just kind of figure out best ways to solve problems. But some of the fast fashion brands, there's a list kind of there of kind of some of the brands, so like Boohoo, Zara, H&M, Mango. So High Street and kind of Primark, Pennies, they're all kind of fast fashion companies that are constantly pumping out new clothes that are cheap. And these companies actually make clothes that fall apart. So they're not designed to last. They're designed to fall apart in a couple of years to make you need to buy new things. So I think that I personally boycott, obviously, fast fashion companies. And I think that it's kind of important to acknowledge that these companies aren't designing for the kind of benefits of us. They're designing to make money and different things like that. And I know some of these brands like ASOS have been found to steal a lot of independent designers' designs and kind of collections. And obviously, because it's such a big company with a lot of money, it's very difficult for independent designers to fight against this under copyright kind of things. But so that's all kind of a bit fast fashion, but they're just kind of some of the kind of scary facts and different bits of information about them. But what I really want to kind of talk to you about is like what we can do to kind of help and kind of do the small kind of proactive changes to do our best. So some of the things that we can do to help is I think a lot of small things add up, and it's like a domino effect. So even if people are like, oh, what's the point if I'm the only person doing it? I think if people have that attitude, we're not going to get anywhere. But if you're doing small things yourself and everyone else is doing that, it adds up to this big thing. And say like a handful of people stop buying from Boohoo and Pretty Little Thing, then if lots of people start doing that, then they're not going to get the business, and then it'll slowly start to kind of hopefully change for the better. But I think it's a lot easier to be sustainable than people think. And I understand that like sustainable fashion can be quite expensive, and fast fashion companies do allow people to kind of be stylish and kind of keep up with the trends at a low cost. But I think shopping secondhand and in charity shops and vintage shops can be very, very beneficial. And I think you can get a lot of great pieces in them. You do have to go looking, and sometimes it's a bit more effort than just sitting on your laptop and online shopping. And it's obviously hard with the times now to do this, but shopping secondhand, you can get luxury brands for a fraction of the price. So you can get things like Tommy Hilfiger stuff in charity shops and different things like that. And clothes swapping with your friends as well can be a great way of not even having to spend money, but also getting new clothes for you to wear. I think it's important that people kind of try and fix and upcycle clothes that have worn and kind of been broken over time and have holes in them. Like just 1 or 2 simple stitches that you can learn on YouTube can help fix those things and help help kind of reinvent your clothes. I also think trans-seasonal is a word that I like to use when I'm designing something, so it doesn't actually fit into one set season. So through like layering and styling and kind of having certain pieces within a collection, it can allow you to have a piece that is timeless and won't go out of fashion. So kind of like that whole like little black dress, little black dress and that kind of side of things is really, really, really good. I also think that like looking at trends in relation to, like, I'll just take sweater vests for an example. You can actually just go and buy a cheap kind of sweater, V-neck sweater in charity shop for €1 or €2 and then cut the sleeves off and then you have a sweater vest. So it's kind of thinking smart and outside the box and how you can kind of keep up with trends and at like a cost price as well, because obviously buying new clothes all the time is expensive. So I think this is cost effective as we're all students as well and probably don't have lots of money to buy new things. But there's different ways around that. And I think that's a good way of doing it. And I also think it's important when you're shopping not to buy something for the sake of buying it or buy it because it's cheap in the sales. I think you should buy things that you need, or like look at buying like good quality, long lasting pieces as well. Also when you're shopping for new clothes, if people, like, I still obviously buy new things sometimes, can't buy everything secondhand, but you can get things that that are made from recycled fibers and things like that. So they're like, for the likes of things that made from polyester, there's a type of polyester that's made from recycled water bottles, and then again you're still getting kind of a brand new piece of clothing, but it's still you're not taking anything else from the planet and you're reusing materials that have already been in. And you can get jeans that are made from recycled denim and stuff like that. So I think that they're like really good ways of like consciously shopping. And I really like this quote. This is in relation to obviously zero waste, but I think you can apply it into sustainable fashion and different things like that. And then, so these are some bits from research that I'm doing as part of my project this year. So it's kind of the more kind of scientific side of things. So this quote is really nice. Kind of imagine a world where biological fabrication replaces synthetic manufacturing. So I think it's important, like as a young designer, I'm trying to design for 10 years from now. So I'm looking at, like, these are a lot of projects that people have been doing in their kind of like masters and PhDs all around the world. But I think we should work alongside nature instead of against it to problem solve. And this project here, so this project at the bottom here, Biogarmentry by, I'm not even going to try to pronounce the name, but she integrated different kinds of cellulose and proteins to make this garment photosynthesize. So it helps with air pollution and takes in CO2 and breathes out oxygen. But the really, really interesting thing about this is, because the garment is alive, it really changes people's attitudes towards fashion and how clothes aren't meant to be disposable. So fast fashion companies have built up this big kind of attitude that clothes are disposable and that, like, you wear it once and then it's done, and like, or if you're seen wearing it once, you can't wear it again, that kind of a thing. But this garment here, because it's alive, you actually have to care for it, and I think it creates this more intimate relationship between clothing. And you can't just dispose of it, like you do need to care for it. So I think it's a really, really interesting kind of concept, and it also adds more kind of thing. Obviously it has another purpose, that it helps with air pollution too. And then the next project that I've kind of have been looking at is using bacteria to dye, so aerobic bacteria. So it's obviously a certain type of bacteria, and obviously I don't have a background in science or biology, so this is all very new to me, and I'm trying to wrap my head around it and how it works. But biopigments is what they're kind of called, and it's you can basically dye garments in a complete, like a really big range of bright, vibrant colors, just as you would with synthetic dyes. But you're using bacteria to cultivate on top of the garment, so you're actually it's way more cost effective. You aren't using as much water at all, and there's obviously no harsh chemicals used in it. And a lot of the kind of questions when looking at this kind of research is it practical? Like, can it be done at a like industrial level? And Puma are actually a brand that have done 3 different types of biodesign products or projects, and even though they haven't made it to a commercial stage, it's also proving that you can do it at an industrial level. So they've used bacteria to dye a collection of sportswear. And not only does it dye clothes, but using certain bacteria also has beneficial factors for your skin and different things like that. So it actually works with technical textiles for sportswear and different things like that. And then you can actually integrate different bacterias. And there was another project, and they integrated certain bacteria to help with eczema and different things like that, or to help, like when you're sweating in a top that you're running in, they integrated bacteria into certain parts, like under your arms and in your back and stuff, that actually help fight against the bacteria that would release the kind of when it mixes with your smell, it grows, and obviously it makes your kind of clothes smell and stuff like that. So it actually works against that to help with the functionality of the textiles too. So they're kind of all the different kind of some of the projects now. There's so many out there at the moment, and it's all really, really, really interesting. But yeah, and then I just have a little thing for Q&A, or if I can talk to you about some of the work that I'm doing at the moment as part of my final year project.
Before we get to questions, Amy, thank you very much. That was actually a really interesting talk. I'm not really one for clothes or fashion, as you can tell by my dinosaur onesie, dinosaur hood. It's great. But no, you managed to make clothes interesting to me, so thank you.
I'm interested in what you're doing, like what kind of projects you've been working on.
Yeah, so what I'm doing at the moment is I'm doing a collection for fashion. So when we can do collection for interiors or fashion. So I'm doing it for fashion, and I've taken all of my inspiration from bees and how they see the world, because they actually see the world in UV light. So their color palettes and how they view flowers, and it's really, really technical, and there's so much about bees that I didn't know, and I've actually just fallen in love with them, and I think they're the most interesting things ever. But I'm basically designing a collection that to our eyes is kind of very white and structural, but when exposed to UV and black light, it's going to completely change, and it's going to glow, and you're going to be exposed to this whole new world. So I'm kind of designing an experience through my clothes, if that makes sense. So some of the problems that I'm facing is obviously with the time frame that I have and the finances and different things, is it's very hard to be sustainable in the level that I'm at. But so I'm currently trying to problem solve within that to try and make my collection as sustainable, because part of it is how important bees are to the ecosystem. But so yeah, I'm designing a collection, and I'm doing a lot of things with 3D printing. So I'm 3D printing on top of fabric. So it's figuring out how to get things to change and stick onto fabric, and how they're going to react in the body. So it's very futuristic and probably a bit weird and wild, but it's quite cool. Okay, I can show you the mood board that I've done. Basically, this was for my I had a review there last week, so we've had lots of work. But can everyone see that? Yeah, so basically what I've done here is this is an image of kind of some of the weave structures that I've been doing. So I've been looking at the actual kind of anatomical structure of a bee's eye and the patterns that you see within that. And then I've also been looking at honeycomb. So this very faint picture here is actually a dissect image of honeycomb that I've obviously just made black and white. And then, so this is what everyone will see in like daylight. And then hopefully all goes well. I still don't know how I'm going to do it. But all goes well, this is what it'll look like when the lights are turned off. So this designer here, Rami, designed a collection inspired by bugs and fireflies, and then how they did these glow in the dark pieces. So it's actually the same dress, but it reacts different in different light. But that's kind of some of the stuff that I've been doing this year, which is quite fun. I would have loved to have done my entire project on integrating microorganisms and bacteria into my textiles, but unfortunately we don't have labs in NCAD, and with COVID and everything this year, it's very difficult to try and get different kind of collaborations. I was trying to get on to different biologists and lecturers in other colleges, but no one has time. But I wanted to try and basically integrate bioluminescent organisms, so like plankton. I don't know if anyone's seen the pictures of the sea in Cork with the bioluminescent plankton with the blue. So I wanted to try and figure out if there was a way of making my sustainable reactive yarns glow in the dark by integrating those kind of living planktons into textiles to make them glow, but it's too complicated, I was told, so I need to figure that out. But that's kind of what I've been doing. I don't know, does anyone have any other questions?
First of all, like, thank you so much for this super interesting talk. I think we are all used to like sustainable like lifestyle and so on, but it was so interesting hearing you talk about like the relationship between actually arts and science.
Yeah.
And I was just wondering, so for example, for your project, are you thinking sustainability more from like the awareness, like raising awareness about like how bees kind of experience the world, or is it that you will through the the textiles you're using, will you also use like everything, I don't know, organic? Or I think for us it's often very difficult to also understand the whole certificates and everything in this regard. So maybe you can a bit elaborate on this if possible.
Yeah, so originally with my project, I wanted all of my textiles to be completely sustainable. So I wanted them to be able to biodegrade and to almost give back to the planet. So whether it was integrating seeds or something into it, so when you could basically plant your garment when you were done with it and it would then grow other plants. So there was things like that that I was looking at. But in order for me, so the UV side of it and the bee's vision is really important to me, and I have a huge interest in that. So it's actually very difficult for me to actually design a collection made of sustainable materials. So I'm actually veering more towards kind of using my textiles to raise awareness, and then down the line, because obviously we've such a time limit this year as well, and only certain days on campus to use the workshops. So it's really, really hard to make a fully sustainable like collection in terms of the materials, but I'm going to use it to raise awareness on the importance of bees in the ecosystem, and kind of like bees are kind of endangered, and over the years there's protests to save them and different things like that. So, and a lot of things that like people obviously aren't aware of in relation to bees. So that's the kind of side of it that I'm going to be bringing this year. And then 2-3 years down the line, I want to do a master's in integrating, kind of looking at bacteria dyeing and different things like that, and the kind of the integration with textiles and science, and how that's I really believe that that's the future, and how we can make the fashion industry more sustainable and to help the planet. I think that we need that kind of crossover and other ways of looking. Like I think we should be working with engineers, and I don't think design should be separate to all the other professions out there, because it affects everyone. Like everyone wears clothes and different things like that, so it's kind of like looking at it in that sense. But it's definitely something I'm going to further explore down the years, into how I can make really, really sustainable materials and like textile technology and that kind of a thing, and different stuff like that. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Maybe an after question, like, do you face many barriers with your approach, or what would you say are the main barriers also for other independent designers in this regard?
Yeah, it's in relation to sustainability, it's very, very difficult to be fully sustainable when designing, and there's so many elements that you have to think of. Because even when you're looking at, like when I'm picking my yarns, and say I wanted to use cotton is seen, like something that's 100% cotton is seen as a very sustainable biodegradable material, but you need to think how much water has been used to make that cotton, who's spun that cotton, are those people being treated right and working, deforestation. So like no matter what you do, there's always this kind of chain effect. So it's really, really like, it's really difficult, and I think it's a barrier that a lot of designers face in how to be sustainable and how to kind of work that way. Like I heard of a girl that was doing her master's, and she's deferred for 3 years because her collection couldn't be fully sustainable, and in the end she had to just be okay with elements of it not being sustainable, which is like a problem that I've had to face, because I wanted my collection to be entirely sustainable. But as a designer, you have to make decisions, and things have to obviously change, and you have to make compromises. Probably the best word to say.
Thank you so much for this. This has been such a cool talk.
No worries. Thank you so much for having me. And the last point was, if you have any questions, I can I think Alia has my Instagram account, so please feel free to ask, and my design Instagram account will be updated and stuff shortly. I'm really bad at posting on that, but if you have any other questions, feel free to contact me.